Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan, back for a Locked On Texas Tech special edition. It's the Matador Mob Mailbag, wrapping up the week with the thoughts, questions, pontifications of the wildest bunch in the land, the Matador Mob. So thank you guys out there and gals for keeping the mailbag full once again. We will waste no time getting going. Chris, football on our minds, obviously, as we have plunged into fall camp time here this week, and we're going to kick it off with Keith Van Winkle, KV Dub, is asking about depth that we've recently discussed. And he wanted to offer up a hypothetical regarding a potential drop-off, or maybe not. He says, on both sides of the ball, if you had to compose the team of only second-teamers, what do you feel like season projections could look like here this season if those guys all of a sudden were shifted to the front line? Are we confident enough in that depth to say you could still be competing possibly for something in the range of hardware? Do you feel like there's a dramatic shift? Hypothetically speaking, what are you thinking, Chris?
Well, I think in a lot of cases it would be very similar to like last year, to where you're kind of like a bowl team, but not quite good enough to get over the hump. Because a lot of these guys did start last year. You just missed a lot of front-end game-changing plays and players that affected the game in a positive way. And now ideally you're not going to have to like wholesale go, okay, the whole second team is going to have to play now, and like we can't use these first team guys. The beauty is that you'll now have like second string types and all that get blended in as rotational players, or that they're starters if somebody else goes down. But keep in mind, a lot of your transfer guys are going to come in and be depth pieces. They're not necessarily slated to start or things like that. So that's why the conversation is so important about, because I think I probably said on one of these shows a couple months ago, you're pretty much covered everywhere. If somebody goes down, you're going to be okay. It's not going to just take the train off the tracks and like, oh God, we are screwed. I mean, yes, Barron, yes, Howard Sampson, yes, Jacob Rodriguez, I think, David Bailey, but you're still going to be very competitive even if those people were to miss a game or games because of what's behind them and shifting some things around. Whereas there have been times previous where, I mean, I guess we didn't realize until it played out, but like Braylon Lux was one of these guys last year, and you didn't have, I mean, Jalen Peoples came in against ACU. Macho Stevenson came in against ACU. Remember this first game when Braylon, and it was, what was the final? I mean, it way too close. So
something in overtime.
That's what I'm saying. So that's the massive difference here. I mean, like, think about the DB part of it. Terrian Grant, who has been one of the least talked about transfer additions. This is a former 5-star recruit, and he's probably third string. So these are, there's and somebody like Jalen Peoples is no longer here, and you've just changed the overall dynamic of your football team. Like, I even there's guys on defense right now that are running third team. There's like 4 or 5 guys running third team in practices, literally in this time that we're talking, and in these first few 2 or 3 days of practices that were starters last year or did start last year. And that just is the massive difference here, in that they don't necessarily have to be. And it also allows you to bring somebody like, we made a big deal about Duda Banks and Dylan Spencer and Vinny Scurry and guys like that. While these guys are cleared, that's a bit different than they're 100% healthy and they are the best version of themselves. But the best part about it is that's okay. They can absolutely ease into it because so much has been added and is around them that there would have been times when you and I are looking at each other going, Duda Banks is one of the most important people on your team because who else do you have like him? And now you've got a mini like him, and hadn't always been the case. So he's being allowed to kind of come into this thing. So yeah, the depth is a major storyline in a positive way for this team, and it will be throughout the year. When you see the injury report and you see different guys that are this is football, it's gonna happen, and I think they've tried to mitigate risk by really adding not just quality, but adding a lot of depth at pretty much every spot.
Yeah, and on occasion, the thought of quote unquote "this is football" in this era also means you could have a guy tossed out of the game, possibly locked up in a local clink because he hit a defensive receiver. Things like that. So depth can show up in other ways as well. I will say, to tie into the depth conversation just before we move on, Chase was weighing in here also, and Chase is taking something that did come to mind for me. It's some recent depth skepticism, maybe being a little bit jaded. Chase says, these are his words, saying last year Tim DeRuyter discussed how deep the defense is, all the guys at each position that can do the job, blah, blah, blah. Please tell me, after hearing Joey say the same, it is different this year. And so that's what we're talking about. I mean, is it going to be significant?
And that's a fair point. I think but you have to have context. I think what you had last year when they talked about depth, they had bodies. However, the massive difference is this was a very inexperienced group last year. That is no longer the case. Far, far from it. You have brought in tons of folks that have legitimate starting experience, multiple years of experience, and then your own guys that went through the battle with you last year have experience. So that's why it's a much different conversation. You have established depth. I mean, and Joey, I think he's really kind of tried to point this out. Like there weren't a lot of chances taken with a lot of these portal guys. Is because they saw it. It's like they've done it in college, in a starting spot at a group of five or a power five school. Like, we have the film, we watched it, we know, and that really went for everybody. They didn't just take somebody that didn't really play at all, that was some big time kid, and like, hey man, let's spin the wheel and see if this works out. No, these were all guys that played and played well. And I heard somebody the other day. And it's probably important to say exactly what is defined as a blue chip. But I think it was the guy that runs Pick Six Previews. He said, the way we grade it, and we graded the portal, Texas Tech brought in 12 or 13 blue chip players from the portal. Okay. The rest of the conference combined, didn't hit that total with blue chip prospects in the portal. So that's the difference. Is you have game changers, established experience, and all that, and you have bodies. So last year they were just all unproven, and I think that they probably tricked themselves into thinking that they had quality depth, but it was just really quantity. It wasn't. There was not a lot of drop off, but there also wasn't a lot of standout players either. There wasn't. I'm talking with my hands a lot because it's like I'm remembering a lot of those long passes that you were giving up and like looking at the back of the jersey, running down the field way too much.
Yep, there he goes.
Yeah.
Something you may have just sort of answered this question in part, talking about some experience, but had a couple of guys weighing in on a different subject related to this season. Lawrence saying he agrees with some recent comments we made about winning on the road being one of the key factors to getting where you want to be, and that being Arlington this year. He asked if you could offer up what you feel like are some key traits or characteristics of teams you've been around who have been successful on the road, maybe experiences on that list. And Ed is saying that he views this season's schedule, toughest road games, Utah, Arizona State, K-State. If you could name one most critical to Tech's title game appearance chances, could you pick one out? So some traits for winning on the road and maybe the most critical one this year. First, today's episode brought to you by 5 Hour Energy, and it's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5 Hour Energy Transfusion, bringing the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink minus the alcohol into a quick, energizing shot. Let's be honest, some days on or off the course, you need a boost to stay sharp and energized, and the grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your go-to at the clubhouse or anywhere on the course without having to chase down the cart girl. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use our promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders, whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to survive. 18, turn it into 36. Get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. Traits for winning on the road and maybe the most critical one this year.
Well, you have to be able to win on the road. You've got to have a mature football team. I mean, there's going to be adversity. You're going to deal with crowds, and it's obviously the different scene, and some teams handle it better than others. Some teams are front runners. Hey, man, when things are going well, look out. But when it's not going well, we're going to fold. And so you need a that's where this culture aspect. But you're going to have to be able to run the ball between the tackles on the road. You know, and this is where like, you know, penalties or lack thereof. And being able to create turnovers is such a massive thing when you go play on the road, because you've got to figure out a way to level the playing field. Like, let's just talk ourselves through this one. Like the Utah game, I think they're going to be really good, maybe much better than I would have thought. Where they really lack is the ability to, at least right now, the biggest concern on their team is like when that kid, the new player Devin Dampier, drops back to throw it. There's not a lot of proven commodities whatsoever at receiver. They feel good about him running it. They feel good about the backs running it. So this is going to be so point is, you get up in a game like this, can a team like that come from behind? With Arizona State, it's going to be a smash mouth game. And to answer the question, that's the one I would point to. Yeah, in that order, I would say Arizona State, Kansas State, and Utah, and it's the margins are probably thin on kind of how you're differentiating those three games. But I'm just paying homage to the defending champs, and I think that there's so much back on that team. Kenny Dillingham has talked about retention that's what was so big, and they should have tried to retain their playoff team's roster, and they went and added the kid from Army that ran for over 1,000 yards to replace Scattaboo, and so their biggest issue is, I think I've said recently, is complacency. That's really what their biggest internal problem is going to be: is are they hungry enough? Do they win all those close games? Do they catch those breaks? I mean, whatever. But that's the one that. Because a win there and a loss for Arizona State, I think that's the most impactful movement in the standings based on the two teams we're talking about, yourself and them. And I also think that game is maybe gives you the most national street cred. If you were to go into Tempe on a Saturday and get it done, which is probably going to be a Saturday night, and get that done, I think that maybe moves the needle the most of anybody else. There'll be people paying attention when you go to Utah and Kansas State too, assuming you've been able to stack up some wins and remain relevant.
All right, thank you for that question. A couple more here from Travis, and this one, let's see here, from Ronnie as well, that I kind of feel like are tapping into some things you're talking about there again. Experience, maturity, poise, things along those lines, because we're talking one-score games, we're talking tight situations. But Ronnie kicks it off in this way, says, I agree the coordinators have not been discussed enough this offseason, but the real most overlooked storyline, special teams. He's talking kicking game. And Travis had this to say, with 7 one-score games last year, should we be more concerned about new kicking and special teams play? So maybe there's a most under-discussed segment, Chris, part 2, involving the leg crew.
Yeah, I mean, the one-score games is it's a thing. I think you were pretty good in those last year, and so was Arizona State. I mean, there were some of these teams that, like, when you kind of and I've seen that some of the metrics don't like you this year because you won so many one-score games last year. And so they're kind of playing the it evens out game. I think Tech's goal is to not be in many of those. Like, you know what?
I like that idea, actually.
Let's just remove that from the equation and let's just beat the,
right. You mean by us winning, us running away.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
right.
yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I can assure you that is kind of was the thought, or part of the thought, when you're really putting this transfer class together and you keep going. You're like, you know what? Let's keep going. I mean, there was some, gritting of teeth right there and some motivation that you're like, let's squeeze everybody. I mean, because we're talking about it now, and I didn't want to really believe it at the time, but I had people back in like January when it was freshly put together saying, this may be one of the best defensive lines in college football. This is pre-David Bailey, not just the Big 12, and they just kept, tweaking and adding and, being opportunistic and all those things. But I think, yeah, the large in part, the goal is to not be in as many one-score games. Now, because the question is, do we trust Upton Belafont in a one-score game? Is that kind of what we're getting at? I mean, I have no reason to believe until we see it in game action that you have anything to worry about there. He was really good at Buffalo last year. This was a kicker that went to Alabama initially, and he was sitting behind one of the best kickers in the country. So he's clearly got the track record, but kickers are mental. And so we saw Trey Wolf, be the best and then be really bad and then get it back and be one of the best again. So who the hell knows, man? But I hope that Upton Belafont is not in too many pressure situations, because that would be by design. But at some point, just like we talked about Barron, just like you talked about the running game and who the short yardage guy was, at some point he's going to have to produce in a key spot. And there's just no doubt. Like
we're at parity HQ with Big 12, so you got to believe it's going to factor in largely. And I like your description of them as mental in all ways that you could define that for both better and worse. I mean, it was just last year we had one prancing through the end zone with some political messaging on his belly. You just never know what to expect out of the kicking game. Thank you for that question. This question here, Greg asks, will this team have the best team speed Tech has put on the field, and maybe significantly?
Say it again. Will this be what now?
Will this team have the best team speed Tech has put on the field, and maybe significantly?
Defensively, without a doubt. I mean, I would say without a doubt defensively. I think offensively, probably. I mean, but just pure speed and play. I mean, that it remains to be seen, because there's something about how many guys are going to run a 4.4 or run this fast on a GPS. You have to see it play out. Like, can somebody get around the edge on you, and defensively, do you just, lock that up? Like Jakeem Grant wasn't winning any 40-yard dashes, but nobody was catching him, and he was so quick, and he played really fast, right? And he may have won a 40-yard dash, but you get what I'm saying. He's not. So I want to see what Quentin Joyner and Jacoby Williams and Reggie Virgil and Terrence Carter. I want to see what all these guys look like when the pads are on and you're playing, and you'll kind of find out how fast it is and how electric it is. Can you really win on the deep ball, or you're still playing in that 20-yard box like Tech, I feel like, has been playing in for 10 or 15 years, where you've had some exceptions, but because really, when's the last time that you just felt like you had dudes that just could run by people all over the place? I mean, and it wasn't scheme. It wasn't like a play action that kind of created somebody to be open. When did you just have guys that can be like, you versus me, I'm running by you, he's going to throw it, I'm going up to get it, the end, there's nothing you can do, right? You haven't seen a lot of that. And I don't necessarily know if I can definitively say, oh, you're good there. I need to, I guess, see that play out first.
Yeah, I would agree.
Your running back room, though, is legitimately fast, but that's only part of the problem, or part of the conversation. I mean, can they bust it off for 60 and actually go, or is it just speed that we sit here and talk about?
You honestly could have stopped after the very first part of that answer and just scratched me right where I itch. Defense, yes, you showed no hesitation in that regard, and that's really all I needed to hear to get going. So love to hear that right out of the gate, and I do agree. We'll see on the offensive side of things, but there's some things to be excited about, particularly with those ball carriers. I want to get to it on an upcoming episode with you, Chris. Mac Leftwich, the new offensive coordinator, talking about his collection of ball carriers, which sort of seems to be bubbling right under the radar of a known commodity, but something that seems like a lot of those internally very excited about. So we'll circle back to that coming up next week. Ben is asking, who's going to lead this team in interceptions?
I'm probably going to say Bryce Pollock. But having said that, I could make an argument for Cole Wisniewski, just because I think he's got a knack for being around it. I wouldn't eliminate Jacob Rodriguez from this conversation. And then I think like somebody like Mo Horn may benefit from getting more coming his way because they're not throwing it toward Bryce Pollock.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm going to say Pollock or Wisniewski would be my 1 and 1A answers, with maybe Jacob Rodriguez as another candidate. There would be my triumvirate.
Yeah. Okay. And then if you can't come up with a name, I think you just ask which player in the secondary is playing with the greatest effort, and then put some odds on them also, because there's probably going to be somebody that is not on our hot sheet or our short list right now that might emerge. I'm thinking about, I don't know about you at this time, but I'm thinking about going into the year where Zach McPherson turned into a ball hawk, and he may have already been one, but I just really wasn't aware of it. And then all of a sudden it's like, this guy can't stay away from the ball.
Well, and they come in bunches sometimes. Yeah. But see, you're going to get more opportunities this year in some of these instances, because I'm just going to continue to double down here. I just think you're going to deal with some quarterbacks that make some really quick and bad and rushed decisions. And that usually leads to, a turnover party, and we'll see who all wants to take part there. But I think you can expect quite a bit of that. But I especially think Jacob Rodriguez kind of belongs in this conversation, just because, there could be some things over the middle, some like easy interceptions, if that makes sense. Because we talked about this the other day about the quarterback just trying to get rid of the ball quick, and so short underneath stuff, right there over the middle, or crossing stuff that Jacob Rodriguez will be able to sniff out. And he's got great hands, a former high school quarterback.
All right. Thank you for that question. This one from Ryan, who wants a crystal ball dive here. Offensive MVP, defensive MVP. Could you give us a couple of names on either side you feel like could be that guy at the end of the year?
David Bailey and Baron Morton.
That's going to be a fun year if that turns out to be the case. I'm going to make that prediction.
Yeah.
Those guys live up to those kinds of roles. You're going to be where you want to be, very likely. This question here. Baron Morton production predictions. Can he top 4,000 yards?
I mean, maybe. I mean, yeah, that's not going to take that much more compared to what he did last year. To do that, he's going to have to play in all these games. If it's what you and I talked about earlier, and your plan is to not be in a lot of one-score games, maybe there's some games where he doesn't have to play the whole game or whatever. I don't know, but I think your yards per attempt will go up. We'll see if they hook up on a lot of these lengthy passes and they connect on a lot of these. I think that's the goal. But it's just hard for me to say something like that when I just haven't seen enough of what this scheme is going to look like yet. But I do think that he's going to be in the range of that. Yeah, I would say it's very fair to say a normal year for him would be somewhere between 3,300 and 4,300 yards, somewhere in that range. And then that's going to depend on what else you're doing with the run game. How spread out is that? Was he taking all the reps, or are you hammering people and Will Hammond's getting to come in? But I think that's a fair, I think him eclipsing what he did last year is very fair and very doable.
All right. Thank you for that question. This question here from David. If you could add one Tech player from a previous year, from last year, but you lose the best one at that spot this year, is there one you would take? I feel like there's a right answer, but there's also an answer I'm tempted by.
Taj Brooks.
That's the right answer. I'm tempted by Josh Kelly. I got to be honest.
That's fair.
No disrespect to the current batch. There's some new faces and new hands there that I haven't seen yet. So
here's an off the radar one.
All right.
Gino Garcia.
Oh, I like that. That's a callback. I like that. That may be the right one. Actually, I thought Taj was going to be the obvious right one.
Taj, without a doubt, is who I would give that answer 10 out of 10 times. But if you said, "Hey, you can't do that," what else? I would. Yours is really good, but kicker is a question until it's not, and I feel like I'm eliminating that as a question by just saying Gino's he's proven he's done it, and so anyway, that may be one, but yeah, that's a good one too.
This question here from Derek. Asking about the O-line, defensive line kind of give and take during a fall camp with the D-line getting so much praise. Are you wondering at all if the offensive line might be having some trouble, or do you think it's more so that the D-line is doing their thing?
They do have trouble. However, they win some of these days too. They won some of these days in the spring. I think what Clay McGuire gets worried about is when you get into some of this depth, and you get into some of these second or third team, I think it's pretty clear to everybody involved, large in part, the depth, the second and third team depth with the defensive line is much better than the second, or has been much better than the second and third team on the offensive line. Part of this is because Hunter Zambrano wasn't practicing. Vinny Scurry was being held out. Keep in mind, Duda Banks wasn't either. Neither was Dylan Spencer, and there was plenty of each guys. But you had more higher end guys on the offensive line not really participating. So again, it moves everybody up. And but I think that people need to understand. I mean, the offensive line they get their licks in too. I mean, it's I was watching a clip, I guess it was yesterday, of Howard Sampson and Vinny Scurry kind of in a one-on-one drill, just kind of, some technique stuff. And it just, I like that. I like watching dudes like that. Those are established, and one of those may not even be a starter. I mean, we don't know. So I just I feel really good about what you've got up front. And again, you may take a hit or two somewhere along the way with some of these guys, but I think you're built to be able to handle it.
We spent time, you're making me think of something. We spent time on a recent episode talking about who's going to be this physical tight end that can lend a hand in those types of situations. His name may be Vinny Scurry or whoever offensive lineman number 6 is. Forget the physical tight end. Do we go 6 or 7? How many will they let you line up?
Yeah, and that's it's funny you say that because Jason Llewellyn is a guy that will fill that role. He's going to be a tight end, but he's not really going to be somebody that you're targeting. Maybe in a trick play or maybe a kind of a gimmicky deal around the goal line or something where you sneak him out. But he is going to be your primary block only type tight end, whereas John Carlos Miller is kind of the dual threat, and TC is more of a guy that we're gonna try to throw it to and target, maybe even flex out wide and line him up in the backfield and do some different things. It reminded me too. Remember we were talking about that Wildcat stuff and who would potentially be. Yeah. Who's run that quite a bit, and I think his days of doing that may not be over with. Is Roy Alexander. So
interesting.
File it away.
That's the sound of it being filed away. All right. This from Charles here. A couple of would you rathers. Morton throws for 4,500 or running backs combined for 2,000 plus?
Running backs combined for 2,000 plus.
All day.
Totally. All day.
Yeah.
All day, every day.
With you on that one.
Because if you're doing this, Barron will be throwing for plenty and enough.
Yeah.
What the problem has been in years past, over the last 20, 25 years, is you have the quarterback doing the thing, 4,500, but then the running back totals may equal 1,200 yards or 900. I mean, whatever. And no, I'm going to take the 2,000 every day of the week and twice on Sunday, man. No takebacks.
Running backs will be glad to hear us say that. We're with you, boys. This one defensively. David Bailey breaks the single season sack record, 16 or more, or the entire team matches the total of 3 years ago, 31.
Yeah, the 31 number is in serious jeopardy. That's what I would go to. I think I think between Romello Height and somebody like Jacob Rodriguez that I think has been pretty good, and then like your Lee Hunters and Skylar Gill Howards, your AJ Holmes, these are pass rushing interior defensive linemen. This isn't I'm just going to stand up and clog it up and let everybody do. No, I'm very active. I can pressure. I can get to the quarterback. So it'll be spread around. But that 31 number is in serious jeopardy, yes.
God. My leg is kicking like a Cocker Spaniel on this episode of the Matador Mob Mailbag. I'm loving what you're saying about our defense. Jared is asking this question. Last season was plagued with mental errors, some pre-snap penalties. Not sure of the stat. I heard they're for losers, but I felt like Tech was one of the most penalized teams from a year ago. Do you see that as a player personnel problem, coaching problem? How do we avoid it? We also had somebody else, this one from Benjamin, asking about over the years, Tech has been through several head coaches, a penalized team. So what's the thread that runs through all this time, leaving them there?
So last year, the youth and inexperience on defense, part of the problem there. Busted coverages, personnel groups, and all that. Offensively, you really tried to out-scheme a lot of folks. I mean, I think Zach Kitley was trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat a lot. You've got all these tight ends. You've got, all these different things going on. You have a very poor offensive line. A lot of the offensive line penalties or pre-snap penalties were on the offensive line with just guys that were jumping off or whatever, and that just comes with a not very good offensive line. That was just kind of part of it. But I think you were scheming a lot to have to it was smoke and mirrors. You're trying to cover up this offensive line. You're trying to, protect, or you're trying to do different things. I don't gather that you're going to have to do near as much of that on offense this year. Now, there is a lot of motion and tempo and all these things with this offense as well. But I just think the general experience and age should help you out in that category. But and then defensively, Again, I don't think that Shieldwood's going to ask them to do just a ton, other than to go beat the guy in front of them, and so that could limit some of that. And like I don't think you'll have to commit many pass interference penalties and some of that stuff. But like the pre-snap stuff on the offensive line has got to be cleaned up. But some of those players responsible for a lot of those are not here anymore.
Okay. I like to hear that. Although, as I think was accurately pointed out, stretches over multiple eras, and that Tech has had trouble here or there. Yeah. So it's been hard to ever pin it down on one coach, in my opinion. And like, boy, this is a problem they created, because typically it was kind of strung along from a previous administration. And I don't know, Chris, sometimes there are teams, I guess, that are just talented enough to overcome that. Tech is rare to never been that type of team to overcome big penalty numbers. I don't want to play with that fire in general, but we'll see what the story is going to be in that regard as we roll through this upcoming season. Thank you for that question. What would a mailbag be without questions regarding? Could you take a guess at the name that I might mention? It's rolling around on the tip of your tongue. And we had George, Sam, Brandon. We had Brent as well asking about, you know who, the man, Ben Henschel. Still, guys, really? You're hung up? But to hear the answer to that question, you'll need to be a Matador Mob subscriber. So hit the show notes and find a link to a free 14-day trial.
And
yeah.
Well, there may be, there's something to tell you there about him and somebody else, that there's some movement there.
For those on the outside, this is where we leave you. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss some movement possibly being there. And become a Matador Mobster today for less than a cup of coffee a month, so you get the full mailbag experience next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Hope to see you back for the next round on the other side. Chris, appreciate your regulation time. The OT is calling.
Bang, bang.
And when the OT calls, you go to the OT. Do hit the show notes. Find a link to a free 14-day trial. And thank you to the everydayers for always riding along. We appreciate you for being out there. As always, for Chris, I'm Casey, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.